We're starting with a national conversation over sexual harassment that has hit everywhere, from Hollywood to high-priced TV anchors, and has also zeroed in on allegations involving Congressman John Conyers. Reports say he's being urged to resign. He is home in Detroit, missing votes in the House, ironically, on mandatory sexual harassment training for congressional staffers. He stepped down from his leadership role on the Judiciary Committee and is said to be weighing his options. One of the troubling aspects of the accusations is the alleged use of office funds for harassment settlement. Let's start there with our contributor. Stephen Henderson from the Detroit Free Press is here. Nolan Finley is off, so joining us back on MiWeek is Daniel Howes, columnist at the Detroit News. Daniel, welcome back to MiWeek. It's good to have you.
Thanks.
And really, what a week it has been. We do have news that on Wednesday night into Thursday, Congressman John Conyers was taken to the hospital. He is hospitalized right now, and friends are saying this because of the stress of the allegations and the media presence that's actually been surrounding him and looking for answers from him. He has not come out and said anything yet. And Stephen, actually, you were just also looking online saying that Nancy Pelosi has called for his resignation.
I saw a tweet that said that she is saying he should resign, and that's that's been a growing chorus throughout the week among not just people outside the Congress, but inside the Congress, who have been saying, at least privately, that this seems to stretch the bounds of acceptable behavior for a congressman. And I think it's clear to everybody it's not just about the allegations against him. It is about the way this was handled, the extraordinary way it was handled, with office funds for a no-show job. I mean, these are things that are just so far beyond the pale, I think, that people are like, there's not a way to recover from them.
And that's what I want to ask you, Daniel. This kind of does move out of just, it's not a simple sexual harassment case where you're looking at what a couple of allegations have been and what a congressman would say in retaliation to that, but how office funds may have been used and what kind of compliance that you get from Congress and what kind of system could be changed here in the future.
Well, I think this really exposes Congress as a follower here on this issue than a leader. You know, it's hard to call corporate America the champions of women in this situation, but when you look at what corporations are doing faced with these allegations and how quickly they are moving compared to Congress, it's pretty remarkable. And I think this does suggest that they have to move more quickly on these kinds of things. They can't brush them under the rug, and they sure as heck can't use taxpayer funds to pay off people to be quiet.
You know, I think it's interesting, though, when you do compare that, and a lot of people have been talking about, well, you see NBC move very quickly against Matt Lauer, CBS against Charlie Rose, and the list of other men who have been removed from high-powered positions. Russell Simmons just stepped down from his head at Def Jam Records. But you had those are corporations who are paying Matt Lauer, who are paying Charlie Rose to do a job. We, the citizens, or John Conyers' electorate, they're the ones that put him in that job. Should they be the ones to remove him from that job, Stephen?
Well, I think that's an interesting question. I mean, so you have to separate Conyers out here from everybody else, right? You've got this system in the House, at least, that appears to try to handle these things by protecting the identity of the accused. This House Compliance Office process is very murky and sort of all behind the curtain by which these cases get settled, again with public money. But there's a process and there is some oversight to it. What Congressman Conyers is accused of doing is saying, I'm going to opt out of that system, murky and untransparent as it is, and develop my own system where I use money that is in my own office to settle this on my own. And this week, Candace Miller said that when she was in the House, she saw this deal and said, absolutely not. And so you've got two problems. One is this sort of rogue nature of what Conyers did, but the system itself that he opted out of is also not transparent enough, not public enough. We had no idea. There are millions of dollars that have been spent in settlements through this that we had never heard of before. Congress has to take a look at that too, in addition to what happens to Conyers.
Daniel.
If you want an example of the swamp, this is an example of the swamp. And what this reminds me of institutionally is the Catholic Church sexual abuse scandals, where all this stuff was going on and cardinals and bishops were hiding things from their parishioners. And it finally took, in this case, the Boston Globe and others to report about this. And I was in Rome reporting at the time when they were issuing the reports on this. And there was a lot of shame that went around. And I don't think this is that different. It may be different in scale, I think, clearly, but I think institutionally it's similar.
It's the same
I think when we had the larger conversation about sexual harassment issues and complaints that have been made, a lot of the conversation surrounds around the enablers and the people that knew, and what you're talking about, the moving of people from place to place, or kind of saying, put it to the side. I want to talk about John Conyers, though, and what this does to his legacy potentially. Now, again, we've taped this show a couple of hours before it actually airs, so there's a lot of time for some different things to happen. What this does to a storied career of a congressman who fought for civil rights and is a hero to the people who have elected him year after year tirelessly.
Yeah, and I've said before, John Conyers is one of my heroes, dating back to when I was a small child growing up here in Detroit. I mean, he was someone whose actions demonstrated over and over again his commitment to justice, to civil rights, to equality, often in the face of real opposition, often in the face of threatened violence. There's no question about his place in our history locally or nationally. But at the same time, you know, I'm the editorial page editor at the Detroit Free Press, and we decided last week that what he's done here means he has to resign. And I think you can manage those two truths in an honest and in an intellectually honest way. What he did before and what he's meant to this community could never be changed. But right now, what he's done means he can't be the person who represents us in the Congress anymore. The betrayal of trust represented by that settlement is so severe and so irreparable that I think he has to go.
Daniel, is that too early of a call, though? Should we have the House Ethics Committee take a look at this first? Do we need to see things play out before he should resign?
No. I mean, I think he can make that call, and I've heard a number of his colleagues, Democratic colleagues, asked about this in media interviews, and they don't answer the question, but what they do say is that's up to him. And I would submit that the longer this goes on, the more damage there's going to be to his legacy. And there are have been a lot of great politicians and a lot of great figures who have mixed legacies, to Stephen's point. And this may not be any different.
So that's up to him. The decision is up to him, and obviously the people who are surrounding him right now. Stephen, give me a sense of who that is and what kind of conversations you think that are being had right now.
I mean, I think, you know, certainly his wife and his family is with him, and that's important because I think it is a stressful time for him, and that's not the most important thing we should be thinking about, but it is something we should be considering. I know that there have been a lot of conversations in Congress about this among the different constituencies. The Congressional Black Caucus has had a lot of conversations about this. There are members there who pushed to have him step down as chair of Judiciary, want him to leave. Now you've got the former speaker, the minority leader, saying the same thing. That's the group that I think will ultimately help him decide what he's going to do.
The longer he stays, he runs the risk that more and more people come out, and it's just going to do greater and greater damage to the party in Congress. And I think that's what they're looking at right now, is what's the cost-benefit analysis here. He's 88 years old. He's had a great run. It's time. We don't need to go down this road and suffer the slings and arrows, as it were.
Can you imagine what these hearings will look like, talking about the things that these accusers are saying?
Well, and Marion Brown was on, one of the accusers was on the Today Show actually on Thursday morning. You are set to, are you supposed to be working to talk with her this afternoon?
I mean, the story she's telling is mind-blowing. You can't imagine, I can't imagine someone like John Conyers, who I've known personally for many years and not just looked up to. I can't imagine him doing these things. And I think Daniel's right. The more you hear about this stuff, the more we play this out in hearings, in documents, in investigations, it does not serve his interests or hers. I also don't think it serves his constituents' interests.
I think that's exactly right. And his legacy would just continue to be eroded by continuing revolution.
You know, I wonder the next part of the conversation and looking at Marion Brown talking about this right now and breaking that non-disclosure agreement that she has. Well, is there going to be a larger conversation about should these agreements even be in place, and what's the ramifications of her going beyond something that she signed saying this is going to be a confidential agreement?
That's a really great question. These kinds of agreements are used in all sorts of employment disputes, some of which have nothing to do with sexual harassment. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, is it different when it's with a member of Congress than when it's with a private corporation? Maybe. Is it less enforceable? Possibly. But this is how business is done, and I think a lot of people are being reminded that this is kind of the seedier side of how these relationships work. I don't think she's going to pay a price for it in terms of legally. There may be a lot of media pressure, but I don't think she's going to pay a price for it.
I'll let you get the last word on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got to reform the way Congress deals with this altogether. And this question about the non-disclosure agreements, I think is worth hashing out, because the primary thing you want to do is protect the accuser, right? I mean, there's already too much burden on the people who suffer this abuse to have to come forward and go through this crazy process in Congress by which they are doubted from the jump in terms of the veracity of what they're saying. That's what we have to sort of worry about. And the non-disclosure agreement, does that protect the accuser, or does that put them in a more precarious position? I don't really know the answer to that, but I think that's what we need to be talking about.
All right.